How to Create a Glitch Monologues Season 7 Chapter 6. This is Episode 6 of How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix Monologues Season 7. In this episode, I will be discussing the nature of romantic love. The purpose of this episode is not to discuss the ultimate implications or significance of romantic love, but rather to describe the method or process of infatuation and its aftermath. To the extent that any of us desire a romantic partner, which is of course most, there are certain symptoms of the process by which our infatuation manifests and how to observe it from an impartial view. First of all, we all, to the extent we desire a partner, project a kind of shell archetype constructed out of our desires, which contains within its fabric certain expectations regarding how someone should act and be and how they should fulfill our desires. This role or archetype constructed out of our desires represents a projected or manifested sequence of actions, common interests, common passions, and most of all, the existence of a powerful gateway which corresponds to a link between the unconscious minds of any receptive individuals and us. Now, romantic love or infatuation is not merely a link between this projected archetype or role and receptive individuals. It is a dual process, created by both our ability to match their archetypal constellation through convergence, while at the same time fitting our projected role composed of our expectations, the fulfillment of our desires. Thus, the projected shell archetype which we carry with us, which we pursue, so to speak, in others, by looking for receptivity to our expectations, is a manifestation or cross-section of our archetypal constellation in its entirety, a kind of esoteric alignment which promotes the infatuation which follows the assumption of a receptive individual of the role. The unconscious link between two romantic partners is the result of an archetypal convergence of their constellations, the matching of their projection shell archetypes. Now, the failure of the unconscious link, the loss of archetypal fit, the divergence of their archetypal constellations foretells the end of the infatuation, and a sense of disillusionment, created by the appearance that the receptive partner was merely playing a role, and the genuineness of their affection was contingent on some abstract link between your behavior and some ideal constructed out of recycled perceptions of the past. Hence, we see that infatuation hides a deeply convoluted process of alignment and convergence, the linking of two complex equations of desire and expectation, which in its end, finds heartbreak and disappointment constructed out of a false sense that the other was not who you thought they were, nor who they were projected to be. Now, it also occurs to this writer that the process of infatuation, its fulfillment, the nature of the archetypal alignment, supports an assertion that developmentally, the nature of our projected shell archetype changes and evolves, approaching some final conclusion in a distinct archetypal convergence, namely, the apotheosis of our individuality in becoming dialectical to what we project. Essentially, what I am saying is that the evolution of our shell archetype approaches the symbolically opposing oriented archetype created by our archetypal constellation. Suffice it to say, each time we fall in love and fall out of it, the shell archetype shifts, until it produces in us apotheosis created by our union with a receptive self which matches the archetypal alignment of our dialectical opposite by symbolic orientation. In the end, infatuation may not be true love as advertised, but it is still part of a process of development of our consciousness toward the mastery of this system. The reason for this is simple. To the extent that we require others to self-negate, we compel them to exist in our consensual reality, which senses the content of their expression. Infatuation ends in disillusionment because we are unable to accept them as they are, unable to maintain the emotional connection through our shell archetype. Anyway, that's the end of the podcast for today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe.